Welcome to Block 2, Part 2 in our Street and Team-Wise Soccer with Trauma-Wise Coaching curriculum. Today we're going to be talking about using scripts to set boundaries and begin to build team culture. And we are still in the mode of prevention. And we will see how what we've learned in these last two modules will help us when we're dealing with actual problems as they arise. So, just to remind ourselves of our journeys, we are super focusing on the idea that we as coaches should be embodying secure attachment to not only heal what kids might have been going through, but also to prevent the harm that can happen with sport participation. And the second thing is balancing structure and nurture. We are having high expectations and looking for a high nurture culture. So, block one, we started with the coach. We figured out why maybe it's hard to keep our own lids down and learned a lot about attachment. And then for block two, we're talking about prevention, which includes empowering, getting the most out of the kids. And then today we're talking about setting healthy boundaries, using scripts, and then seeing how that contributes to a good team culture. And in block three, it'll be reacting, how we can actually respond in the moment using the tools that we've been talking about. And then finally, in person, we'll have a session where we can actually experience a lot of this and role play. And we talked initially in this curriculum about the core operating code that we all have, whether it's secure, avoidant, resistant, or chaotic. And once we understand secure attachment, we can begin to help set boundaries, which give kids a sense of felt safety. And if we have an insecure attachment, we can rewrite the core code with a little hard work. And then what's always running in the background is healthy relationship skills, where we are trying to maximize the kids' abilities to give and receive care and encouragement, to be their authentic selves without shame or to minimize shame. And then also allowing for them to negotiate for their needs without being harmful or even negative to self or others. And so we're trying to promote connection and self regulation. And that when we're embodying secure attachment, we do expect to have to challenge kids, both behaviorally, culturally, in terms of team culture, and then skill wise. But in case they have a high degree of fear, shame, and guilt, we balance that with nurture, empowerment, and safety. And this gets us away from the dynamic of being abusive or toxic, where we're not even paying attention to the fear, shame, or guilt that they may have inside. And then in the last session, we talked about the science behind creating places where healing and growth can happen. And we saw that a good amount of what we're taught in the US soccer curriculum is reflected in this, in that rituals, artifacts, flows, transitions, completions, timings of feedback, proper touch points, settings, emotional climates, and scaffolding are all things that we can do as coaches. And it's best if we just are intentional and know what we're doing to maximize the opportunities that we're given. But there is a pitfall that we're going to be talking about in terms of nurture and empowerment. As you can see in the picture, that wouldn't be a great image of a soccer practice if we just empowered and nurtured kids to the point where they wanted to be somewhat chaotic. And that's why we balance the idea of structure and nurture. And some people naturally do structure better, and some people naturally do nurture better. So it's all about bringing the lesser skill set up as coaches. And so last time we reviewed a number of engagement strategies that a number of us can use intuitively, But again, just bringing them to the intentional forefront is what I'm talking about. So, coach voice. We're going to be talking a lot today about the structure side of coach voice, one that communicates, and it does not have to be in a harsh way, that I am the boss and that the kids know that you know what's going on. And then we can remember that there's a nurturing voice, maybe a one on one time where we talk to kids, healthy touch like fist bumps and high fives, playful interactions, mirroring, making sure we're using eye contact in a soft way, favoring curiosity over judgment, and then nudging them with a lot of nurture is what's called scaffolding. So, what we want to be talking about today, is creating a team climate. And so we do that by the use of scripts. And what scripts are very short words or phrases that mean a larger concept that's important to the team. And to make sense of them, remember that the four aspects of relationships are always running in the background. So giving care and nurture, receiving care, being authentic in in our own self, minimizing shame, and negotiating for needs. So those will come up in a little bit. So, for general behavior, what I recommend to us is that we think about one called Coach is Boss. And when kids are interacting with you, just kind of pay attention to if they're asking or telling. And we're going to want to make that a little bit more explicit. But so, Coach is Boss is number one. Listen well, have fun, work hard, and who works hard, self and team. And then we can speak up, but how do we do it? With respect. So those provide a number of evidence-based general scripts, and also from my coaching experience as well. And then when we're talking about correction, we'll get into the idea of allowing and advocating for redos, making sure the kids have a sense of some choices, but the coach is always in charge of those choices. And then compromising helps bring in that idea of negotiation. And then also sometimes the kids are going to have to accept no. And so these are some basic scripts that we'll be working on. But let's take a deeper dive into the idea of scripts. Let's say you see kids bossing other kids around. They're doing a lot more telling versus asking. And so you kind of can remind them that the coach is the boss. And so as you frame however you enter into that situation, you're going to say, hey, remember, coach is boss. I see that you're doing a lot of telling, but that's my job. Do you want to try that again and or offer a redo? So you can kind of see how things go together, and they subtly and gently begin to prove the point about what's going on. So, other things, complaining about playing time, not following directions, you can always enter into an interaction with the script as, hey, remember, coach's boss, I hear you're complaining about playing time, but we need to talk about that. You want to think about how you want to engage that. You can always speak up, but how do you do that? Oh, yeah, with respect. Yeah, awesome. Okay. So I'm going to give you a minute and then we can come back and talk about this. So that's how we begin to use scripts in the day-to-day management of the team. And so I want to also introduce the concept of a team check-in, where we're in a circle for a little bit of time, and you want to focus on one of the scripts that maybe help the culture, not necessarily manage the game, but are trying to build the team culture. And remember that these are framed as a positive way. So it's what we want to see as opposed to don'ts that you're not supposed to do. So that's a very important thing in psychology so that kids respond well. And so, how do you work this into the flow? Well, you may be watching how things are going, And you don't necessarily have to respond in the moment, but when there's a good team check in or a transition, you can kind of bring their attention back to, hey, one of them is we stick together, or we work as a team, or something like that. But in this case, hey, I hear a lot of telling people what's going to happen. And remember, coach is the boss. So remember, let's say it with me, coach is the boss. And so I might kind of prompt you if I hear that you're telling versus asking by saying, are you asking or are you telling? And that'll be a subtle reminder to you guys that remember, coach is boss. Next is listen well. Okay. So if the coach is talking, if I see a lot of people joking around or whatever, hey, remember, guys, it's listen well time. And you can even do that as we talked last time, playfully. You can say, hey, knuckleheads, remember, listen well. How's that going for you? And then we can talk about escalating structure in our responsiveness. And then, of course, have fun is another one. And so this is one of those things that I always expect out of the kids. And in a team check-in scenario, maybe at the end of practice, hey, did everybody have fun? And then you kind of gauge the response. And then you can remind kids, hey, if you didn't have fun, come talk to me after practice. I'd love to know why, and maybe we can work something out. And then working hard, and then who works hard? Me as a player, and then as a team. And so again, in this check-in time, we can use these scripts as a quick check-in. You guys felt like you worked hard? And then if anybody doesn't feel that way, please talk to me after practice. And then speaking up with respect. I there's one that's called no hurts. And so most of the time, what I saw in the fall with the kids when they got dysregulated is they were kind of verbally bashing each other. So I think it's best that we can kind of pull this together as it's okay to speak up, but with the script, how do we speak up? And if the kids get used to the idea with respect, then they know that they can say something, but that they have to do a little bit of work with being respectful, and that's going to help us. If you phase forward into a game, I've seen so many games where the kids are not respectful with each other, and then they just crumble and fall apart. So if we kind of talk about this idea of being able to speak up, even if you want to correct another player, or even a player wants to correct a player, they can do it with respect, and we can talk about that. But what happens if we need to do some correcting? And so the scripts that we're working on there are redos. It's very simple in a playful way, depending upon how bad it is, to say, you know what, when you just told so and so to do this on the field, didn't really quite sound respectful. Why don't you redo that right now and make sure that everything's okay? And then they can kind of do it real quick. We move on, no big deal. You don't have to go into command and control. You need to stop. You need to do something. Shame them on the field. Just say, hey, speak up with respect. Try to redo that for me. All right. And then you can talk about some choices. Maybe something happened and they did one thing. Hey, think about your choices and try again. Again, we can kind of stay on the, when you spoke with so and so, didn't really sound respectful. Think about some things that you could do instead. And they could say, hey, I could do a redo or I could apologize. And then you can praise them for coming up with those choices. And remember, coach is boss. So you are ultimately giving them a thumbs up or thumbs down on those choices. So you're maintaining the supervisory position. And then compromising. Hey, coach, I really want to play forward today, but you really need someone on defense. So then you can put it on the kid. Hey, yeah, I need somebody on defense. Why don't you come up with a compromise that we can both work with? And then give the kid a minute to think it over and then see what they come up with. And then sometimes you guys might be saying, well, I'm the coach, I may need it. And so accepting no becomes a script as well. And so as a coach, we then realize that if I have to say, look, I cannot put you in it forward today, I really need you at defense, and they say, okay, then you can say, I really appreciate the way that you accepted not getting exactly what you wanted. And so you can still use that moment to build connection so that they see what happens. And then the caveat on accepting no is that we don't want to overuse it. As you can kind of get the sense, we are trying in this behavioral scenario with the scripts is to give as many yeses as possible as we're staying in the moment, staying connected, and being the boss. But we're being a boss in a very benign way for the kids to remain safe. Now, what Paul and I are working on for the club is connecting this behavioral management to playing time. And what I'm proposing at this point, and this can change, is that we use a band, we use basically some kind of a band that's small and subtle and won't be um, taken by the refs as illegal, but a system that puts in place the structure of behavioral expectations, but also is kind of fun and we're able to help them. But I'm thinking it encompasses leadership, fitness skills, or fitness ability and skills, all that can be worked on by the kids with the help from the coaches. So when a kid enters the club, they're given a white band. Think about like white belts in karate. And then as they progress in their leadership, fitness, and skill levels, they're given a black band. And then finally, when they reach the top tier, they're given a gold band, which means they can expect the most playing time. And so they can see that there is a pathway to improvement that we have a plan and we can help them with. Okay, we're coming to the end of this session. And just remember, we're embodying secure attachment. We're balancing structure and nurture, which gives us the sweet spot of organizations for effectiveness. And then we started with block one, understanding our own um, attachments and how we bring that into the kids. And then block two, we're starting to build the idea of how do we prevent and behavioral issues with scripts and engagement. And then block three, we'll talk about reacting, using those scripts to help calm and enforce boundaries. And then finally, there's a capstone session coming up as well. And remember, the whole point here is that kids learn better. They receive our coaching better when their lids are down. And so we do want to create safety in practice, but there's a part of us coaches where the kids need to be ready for the game situations. And so we are wise to recreate the controlled chaos of a game as we're going through our sessions. And sometimes I really like the idea of making the field a lot smaller so that we can really push limits. So we are trying to recreate the chaos of a game, but also balancing it with safety where kids can actually learn and remember what we teach them. So that's it for today, and I'll have the next videos out fairly soon.